Hey everyone, welcome. Gosh, it's been a while since we've done a Rem Alternis Productions live stream. I'm here today though with some very special guests. As many of you know, we do Kickstarter management at Rem Alternis Productions and marketing, and we've been lucky enough to work with my friends over at Boosted Reality Games. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Doing great, Rem.
Really well. Thanks,
Awesome.
man.
I'd love to do a little intro of who you are, how you got into gaming, and how you got into this wild ride. So, Stephen, let's start with you.
Sure. Well, gosh, I've been captivated by board games and role-playing games since I was a kid. Still have good friends from junior high I used to play D&D with and go to board game nights with. And as board games have evolved, my enjoyment of them has evolved as well, where I like the sort of big, crunchy, complicated ones, and I like the simple, fast, and fun to play ones. But for a long time, I've wanted to create a game. About 7 or 8 years ago, I had an idea for Boosted Reality and the Rift Zone Contact game, which I shared with Jeremy, and we've been working on it in fits and starts ever since, and now it looks like we're ready to bring it to the world.
Awesome. Awesome. What about you, Jeremy?
Pretty much really similar. I've been playing board games since, gosh, I probably just slightly after I could read, and then always making up my own as well. So friends would come over and be like, you know what, we like all these Monopoly and Risk pieces, but what if we played Monopoly Risk? So that was always fun. And then as I got to be a little bit more creative, getting into D&D and then running my own D&D campaigns and surviving the scars of THACO. And then Steve came along and said, I've got this idea of making really deep and engaging games that are super easy to play. And guess what? You don't have to do a whole lot of math. I said, I'm in.
Yeah, that's a pretty nice bonus. We tend to do a lot of RPGs here on this channel. So getting into the mini side of things, and I think there's that fear a little bit of moving over to something so that can be known for being so crunchy. So we are going to do an AMA here today. So you can ask anything you like in the chat about the project, the game, Boosted Reality, favorite foods. I don't know, whatever you want to ask, you can. But in the meantime, for those that are joining us, like I know we probably have some viewers in Twitch that'll be joining us since we haven't been live in so long that may not have heard of your project. So what is Rift Zone Contact?
Great question. So Rift Zone Contact is a miniatures war game that actually changes some of the common held conceptions about miniature war games because it's super accessible, it's easy to play, you don't need a protractor or rulers. All that complexity is taken care of with your smartphone. And your smartphone not only eliminates a lot of the overhead associated with playing a kind of detailed combat simulation, it also adds a lot of really immersive elements like augmented reality and sound effects. And it takes a lot of things that are done in some complex board games, like maybe Gloomhaven, and automates them. So you don't have to have a spreadsheet to keep track of your character development. It's all taken care of by the application. And every character in Rift Zone Contact is unique and can evolve from battle to battle and gain new abilities and new weapons. And so it's taking the best of video games and RPGs and board games and mashing them together into a totally new experience.
So let's talk a little bit about the lore of the world for the game. Tell us about that.
Oh, that's my favorite part. One of our goals when we started out writing the story behind Rift Zone Contact, and Rift Zone Contact is, by the way, designed to be the first chapter in what we call the Rift Zone Odyssey. And it starts with two alien species, the United Earth Defense Force, which are nominally human, and the Scryox Collective, which are a predominantly agrarian, communal, almost hive mind, but not quite, that has experienced a blight, as they call it, on their home worlds. And so they're being forced to find a new planet in order to set up quarantine and to research this. Meanwhile, the humans have followed the typical story arc that we see in a lot of sci-fi. Overpopulated our planet. We colonized Mars with our corporations, as it looks like we're going to do. Experienced a devastating world war called the Scourge. Cut ourselves off from Mars, who then later became an independent colony and kind of a bunch of jerks, but we'll get into that later. So the Skryax and the United Earth Defense Force both fortunately discovered a potential home world, or I should say new home world, on the Proxima Centauri b. That's the second planet orbiting Proxima Centauri. Actually, scientifically looks like it might be habitable in some ways. They both arrived. They both attempted to build colonies. Sadly, the Skryax communicate almost entirely using gravity manipulation. And so when they tried to communicate with the humans, they started crushing the ship. Not generally a good sign. So the humans decided to fire back, and now we've started this war. And that's the story that we have for Rift Zone Contact, is that first contact between the Skryax and the United Earth Defense Force on the grounds of Proxima Centauri b. Now, I mentioned the Skryax use gravity manipulation. So all of our sci-fi nerds out there will say, if you can manipulate gravity, clearly you can start to fold space. So that was there, faster than light travel. And the United Earth Defense Force being heavily based on technology, energy, travel faster than light by projecting their ships up to a higher dimension, hyperspace as it were, moves forward and then pops back down. And we end up with our core later story element of all of the Skryax ships folding space, all of the United Earth Defense Force ships popping holes in space, ended up ripping a hole in space-time that we call the Rift. And thus, Proxima Centauri becomes the first planet that is trapped by the Rift Zone.
Oh, wow. Okay. I like Mech Hero is in chat and says wonky Stargate, right?
Yeah, although there's no wormholes on every single planet, but you will see as we start to move forward that things may come through the Rift, and it may be things that Steve and I design, and it may be things that you design. So you have to get a copy of the game and see.
Awesome.
Well, and while there's no wormholes on all planets, there are some unusual things on Proxima Centauri b that were clearly left there by somebody else. And part of the game is also around discovering what those alien ruins represent and how they affect the future of the Rift Zone Odyssey. So we have a multi-campaign sort of roadmap laid out with not just expansions to the current factions, but addition of new factions. And as Jeremy teased, the possibility of bringing in your own factions. So we've got some fun and big plans that we can't wait to share with everybody.
Awesome. All right. So don't forget, those of you in chat, if you have any questions about the game, lore, the app, the minis, anything at all, you can ask questions for this AMA here. So in the meantime, I'm just going to keep firing questions at you. I know when we started talking about this, one of the things that we wanted to address right up front is that RFID and app related minis games have been attempted before and haven't been successful for various reasons. So what makes this different?
That's a great question. One thing that Steve and I did when Steve approached me about 5 years ago is we sketched out the dream. We sketched out, what does play look like? What does a game look like? And that's actually the core of our first patent on this technology. And that was with augmented reality, that was with being able to uniquely identify the pieces. And when we took a look at the technology that was available, Steve and I were both working for various technology companies at the time. So we had a kind of a preview of what was coming and what was possible. We realized that the bulk of people didn't have access to this technology. You know, at the time, NFC was not in everybody's smartphone. And at the time, not every smartphone had the processing power to do augmented reality. And so we waited. We developed the idea. We've spent years working out the story of the Scryox and the UEDF and what's going to come next. And then as the technology caught up with us, we are now able to say, we can deliver a great game experience. It doesn't require any additional hardware. It can be supported for years to come because we're basing it on the standard platforms that Google and Apple are already providing. So as long as Google and Apple are still in the mobile phone, smartphone business and there's app stores, we'll still be able to deliver on the dream that we set out for. And that's really what makes us different, is that we chose to use technology that everybody already has. And we chose to do it in such a way that we can open it up to the community. Not that we're going to dive headfirst into open source, but that's definitely one of those areas where we're going to start to ask the community to contribute, to participate, to help us build out this Rift Zone Odyssey universe.
Awesome.
And while we have high confidence in the existence of Google and Apple years from now, we also have our paper and dice version of the game that will be made available to everybody. So in the case of the Scourge and the final World War, if you survive in between scrounging for food, you can play Rift Zone Contact.
That's great that you bring that up, because I just got a question in the Catalyst server. This is from Fleetfoot Mike, so thanks for this. I always found the interesting question with games like that is what happens when the app or the server that backs it goes away? Do you still have a game?
Mm-hmm.
So all playable by paper and pencil too?
That is our final post-apocalypse solution, is no pencils, but paper and dice.
Yes. And
we still wanted to stick with you shouldn't have to do advanced math in order to have fun at a game.
Cool. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. I guess the other thing I was just going to add, Rem, is you mentioned that a lot of people on the channel are into RPGs, like Jeremy and I. Well, I'm playing in one of Jeremy's D&D games this weekend. One of the things that was really important to us was that all the miniatures in the game are compatible with 28 millimeter, 32 millimeter miniatures. So if you want to bring them into your Cyberpunk or into your D&D game or any other role-playing game, they're conveniently sized for that.
Awesome. So a couple quick maintenance things. We are going to switch our overlay to be able to show the Kickstarter numbers and where we're currently at. So we're going to check in with that. And then as we check in with that and transition to that, I got to inform Jeremy and Stephen that part of the rules of showing the Kickstarter numbers is that when it goes up, we have to dance. It's required by the laws of the internet. So we have to happy dance if it goes up and celebrate.
Okay.
So.
Fair enough.
Awesome. Jeremy, you were just showing a miniature that's not so mini, it looked like. Can you show that again?
Yeah, so this is hard to frame it in the shot, but anyway, this is our mauler. This is the effectively our tank on the Scryox side of the battle. So
Cool.
This guy will exercise a special ability, which will burrow into the ground, get some shielding from ground cover, move across the battlefield faster than it normally could, and then it will pop up and it has this pretty devastating mandible attack that eats up. So we said 28 millimeter compatible, which means we've got our mauler versus our regular sized mech armored space ranger. So you can see you could have this sort of battle. This guy is pretty much the same size as most of my D&D minis as well. So you could have your space ranger in the midi, or you could have your paladin and your wizard fighting against the mauler if you wanted.
Nice. Okay. Now, in an opposite question of what I asked about what happens if the app isn't supported in the future or something like that, Mech Hero asks, what are some unique things that the app allows you to do that you couldn't do with dice and paper?
That's a great question.
I love answering. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fun part about having the app is that we can make a multimedia experience out of your tabletop game. So, if you're like me and you play D&D and you like to have a soundtrack in the background, and you often think, if I had my act together, that soundtrack would change when things were happening in the game. We can do some of that really easily with the mobile app. So we can layer on animations, we can layer on sound effects. We have, when your turn comes up, your faction's theme music plays, so you know it's time for you to take action. We are actually able to keep track of every unit on the battlefield individually, keep track of every unit that they interact with. We can actually tell a story of kind of how the battle went for them and how the last 10 battles went for them. We've talked about the ability as we evolve the game to have units have grudges against other units, to do all kinds of fun things that would be completely overwhelming in a tabletop game. That's pretty trivial for us to accomplish with our mobile app. And the other thing that's really fun is, I love games like Gloomhaven, but I rarely have a 6-hour block of time to play Gloomhaven. So I haven't played it in probably a year now, just because I can't break away and carve out that much time.
Right.
You can do a similar game to Gloomhaven with Rift Zone Contact in 30 minutes. Ooh. And get a lot of the same things out of it. And our intent right now is to move from player versus player to cooperative play to solo play in our game as well. So lots of different game modes, lots of different ways to play, and you can play quickly and have a really great shared experience.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What did I miss, Jeremy?
Well, I always like to talk to people about the things that we can do in Rift Zone Contact that are either nearly impossible in more traditional tabletop war or just super tedious. So one of the things I like is, so our tiles are actually bigger than most, right? We've got 275 millimeter tiles. And the reason that we've got 275 millimeter tiles is because we want to treat terrain like terrain. Ooh. Steve, I'm breaking your minis again. So you can see that the little guy kind of is buried in the terrain, but because the augmented reality is measuring all of the distances for you, our terrain effects are based on the distance going through the terrain. So if you're shooting through a forest and the distance is only 1 centimeter, it doesn't really impact your accuracy. But if you're shooting through a forest and the distance is 20 centimeters, now you've got a kind of a drop in accuracy because of all the trees. So that's super difficult. The other thing that we sometimes point out, and I'll push up my glasses the right way, actually, we're using full binomial equations to calculate parabolic arcs of particular weapons, as well as sort of a decaying damage when area of effect is dropped in the middle. Those on the outside are taking less damage and have a higher chance of evasion than those on the inside. So these are things that sure you could do with a calculator and a spreadsheet, but we just do it in the app. So it becomes an even deeper strategy and tactical game than you would expect, when we also tell you that you could play a super simple game in 30 minutes. You can also approach it like chess, knowing what your pieces do, knowing how the weapons drop off, knowing these sorts of things. You can start to develop a strategy to, let's say, preload your mauler going across the battlefield with time release healing nanites, so that by the time you make it to that giant rocket mech, you're still alive. That's the sort of thing where I really kind of dive in and nerd out on. I want games that have that depth, but I also don't want to take on the mental overhead of calculating it myself.
Sure. Okay. That's really interesting for as you I distracted because I'm watching the questions roll in too. But it's interesting seeing, like, as you hold up the pieces and stuff. I think I had a different vision for the sizing scale and stuff like that. So it's neat that you have these giant gorgeous sculpts and stuff like that, and the big terrain pieces that are so detailed and everything. So that's really
they're fun to paint, for sure. And so I really enjoy that aspect of it. So you can personalize your army in the painting, as well as the fact that each one of them is individually identified. And I think one other thing that just popped into my head is that this is a game where you can play without ever reading a rule book. And I think that's pretty unusual for this class of game. You pick up the app and you just start playing. And at our playtest sessions at conventions, typically people within 5 to 10 minutes don't need us at all to explain anything. They're often running.
Neat.
So that's a nice benefit, especially if you have a lot of friends you want to introduce to a game, and they just don't want to fight through the 20, 30 pages of rules that they have to be competitive. All that is simplified for them.
That low barrier of entry. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. Steve and I
Uh,
get a lot of questions sometimes when we go out to lunch, and we'll bring just a couple of minis, no tiles, nothing, just a phone and a couple of minis. And we'll just play like a mini battle on the tabletop while we're waiting for our lunch. So we'll get people coming by and say, "What are you doing?"
Oh, neat. Okay. Hanabea, thanks, Tyler, asks, how far away can I go from the tag and have it still be readable with the RFID?
Yeah,
ahead,
I mean,
Steve.
that depends on the miniature, but it's generally when you register your army, you're bringing your phone within 2 to 3 centimeters of the top of the miniature. And then once we have all the miniatures registered, it's pretty rare that you have to register them again during the course of the game. But yeah, so it's made so that you can actually tap on them, kind of on the top of them without ever touching them if you need to register them again. So the
Awesome.
scanning is pretty easy.
Okay.
Yeah, it's sort of like you're knighting them. You just
I
little
like that.
knight with the phone.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Apple Pay or any other NFC payments, it's very similar to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what comes in with these different rewards and different levels? We have the Ensign reward for just $19. What does that include in that box?
That is sort of the appetizer box for sure. It's got 2 units in it, the Scarab and the Excalibur, which are sort of 2 of the really distinctive units in the game. It comes with a set of anchor tiles so that you can actually set up the full AR battle, and then Jeremy, as I recall, it also comes with the post-apocalypse PDF and
Yep.
and the downloadable app. So it's a real quick and easy way to get involved. You get these 2 beautiful paintable miniatures that are uniquely identified. It's just a easy access to having that experience, so you can see whether or not you really want to go further into Rift Zone Contact.
Cool. Okay.
Also a good way to add a few units if you buy a bigger pack and you want to size up your army. Because we enforce all the rules within the app, you don't have to stick to the pieces that start in your box. So you could start with one of our smaller boxes or start with one of the bigger boxes and then kind of scale it up as you want more units.
Okay.
So the Ensign pack is great for that.
Awesome.
Yeah, and Jeremy brings up a good point, which is there's multiple modes of gameplay. There's the skirmish mode, which is just sort of setting up victory conditions and then however many units worth of points that you want. And then there's a campaign mode, which sort of dictates from battle to battle, depending upon what happens in each battle, what the setup and the particular units that are in the fight are going to be.
Okay.
So for the skirmish mode, you can bring your army, whoever they are, to the fight and play. For the campaign mode, you're following the story of the game, and actually, in a lot of ways, determining the story of the game as you go.
And the skirmish box set is available as part of the captain tier.
That's right.
So that's got how many minis in each one for the captain tier?
So at the captain tier or in the skirmish box, there are
14.
14 minis and 7 of the terrain tiles, as well as the augmented reality anchors that sort of form the basis of the board. And then every box includes a PDF of our post-apocalypse rule set.
Okay.
Oh, and a
Which
quick
is the
start guide too.
Dice Plus card and a quick start guide. And so the skirmish box is designed to really give you the full flavor. It'll allow you to play obviously the skirmish mode, bring in some of the terrain for that strategic and tactical depth, and play the first couple of levels of the campaign mode. So the campaign mode, like Steve said, not only walks you through the story of first ground contact, followed by attempting to build things up, and it introduces you to the various units and some of the combat and movement mechanics. So you can play the first 2 to 3 levels of the campaign mode just using the skirmish box, and then you can upgrade to the full campaign box set.
Awesome. Yeah, the full campaign box set is the commander tier at $119. And let's start with how many minis. It's 30 unpainted smart minis in there.
That's right. 30
Yep.
unpainted smart minis. Each faction has 6 different kinds of minis in that set. So you get the full representation of all the capabilities, which some of them are pretty fun, like the Mauler and its gravity manipulation, and the mobile command unit that has the ability to improve the targeting of other units or to repair them. So there's lots of neat special abilities that different units have. We try to make every unit unique and to have a unique role on the battlefield. And that campaign game will let you play through the first campaign from finish to end.
Ooh, okay. Awesome. Yeah, it just seeing everything that comes in the commander box. Just for those of you watching and not on the Kickstarter itself, reversible plain forest terrain tile, reversible mountain ruin terrain tile, reversible Scryox UEDF base terrain tile, Scryox Reaper minis, there's 5, Scryox Stalker minis, there's 2, Scryox Swarm minis, there's 2, Scryox Scarab minis, there's 4, Scryox Mauler, that one that Jeremy just showed, there's 1. Scryox Nexus Mini, there's 1. And then the UEDF Stormbringer, there's 1. UEDF Sting Mini, there's 2. The Excalibur Mini, there's 3. Space Ranger Mini, there's 7. Gungnir Mini, there's 1. Scalpa Mini, there's 1. 2 Augmented Reality Anchors, 1 set of team unit tags, 1 printed quick start guide, 1 post-apocalypse rulebook PDF, and the free download of the Rift Zone Contact app for iOS or Android. So all of that comes in the 119 box.
Yeah, we may have gotten a little carried away. But we were having so much fun, and we wanted people to get a real sense of epic battles that can be played with the game. And we're fans of Cthulhu Wars and some other big mini heavy games. And there's something super satisfying about moving your giant mech across the battlefield and having it stare down, enormous 20-foot bugs. So we wanted to be able to let people create that experience and have it across a whole series of games. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
we're also a
fun.
little bit obsessive with making sure that every box, if you play everything in the box, it's still an even battle.
Yes.
So we spent the time to make sure that head to head, if you put all the pieces on the board that you purchased in a single box set, that is an even and a fun battle.
Cool. Okay.
A little chaotic, to be sure, with the commander box.
Don't forget, for our viewers out there, we are doing an AMA, so feel free to submit more questions. I do have one from Breely, 95. What's your favorite unit and why? It's a question for each of you.
Jeremy, you go first.
All right. Well, I know what Steve is going to say, so I'm going to not say that to save you some headache. I've got to say that my favorite unit is the Excalibur.
Ooh.
Because obviously we've been doing this for a while. For me, this is the one that combines both the absolutely gorgeous 3D sculpting of our 3D artists in an action pose with some really fun game mechanics. So the Excalibur is sort of our heavy cavalry unit. He's got his longer range Claymore Gatling gun here, which is a spray of bullets that can hit multiple targets potentially. But he also has on his other arm this lightning sword and shield for both a shield bash attack and a lightning sword attack, which in game affects the overall action point economy. So every unit gets a certain number of action points per round that they recharge. But if you've been shocked by the lightning sword, that recharge is 1 less. And so it really
Okay.
starts to play some of these games where you've got the hit points as a resource, you've got your action points as a resource, and the Excalibur can dive in and have an impact on both of those. So that's my favorite.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah, and I think my favorite is the Mauler that Jeremy was showing earlier. It's a super fun unit because it has so much versatility and there's so many interesting things you can do with it. It can, as he was saying earlier, it can burrow underground, which makes it harder to damage. It also can project gravity effects, so it can hold other units in place in location as it crawls towards them. It can even drag units towards it, which is super fun with its tractor, gravity tractor beam. And when it gets within biting range, the sound effect that our sound artist Rob put together, if you're familiar with the wood chipper, it's a lot like that. So
Oh,
just
no.
getting to that sound effect is worth anything in the game, frankly, for me.
That's really fun. Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Uh,
definite shout out to Rob, our sound designer. That the sound effects both for the Mauler and for the Excalibur's lightning sword are just so satisfying.
Yes, and to our lead artist Keeley, who's done a great job with the visuals, and Tharian, who's done all of the 3D modeling. So we've got a really good team of artists who are contributing and not just the artwork, but also ideas for how to make the game more fun to play and more interesting.
cool. And we did just go up a backer. We're at 13,809. So we owe our audience some
Woohoo!
entertainment. So thank you. Happy dance.
Yes, thank you very much. All right. I don't know. Jeremy and I are engineers, so dancing is probably the last thing they want to see. But
It's for audience entertainment, right?
that's right. That's right. Just as
I
long
think
as we
the
don't see it
correct
on TikTok later.
the correct phrase is, "Damn it, Rem, I'm an engineer, not a dance star."
That's right.
Love it. Awesome. Cool. So
That's awesome.
going back to like the design and everything going in this is the first project for Boosted Reality Games. So I guess, where did the name for Boosted Reality come from, and why did you decide to start the business?
Great questions. The name itself, actually, again, we're engineers, so you have to understand that the way we approach things is methodical. So I think Jeremy and I put together a list of about 100 names, and then sort of went through them against a range of criteria and spreadsheets and all that. But in the end, I think Boosted Reality really appealed to us because we feel like it's really important that we're not building a video game, that we're actually building a game that you're playing together around the tabletop, and we want to enhance that experience. So that's really the origin of the name. And we were really lucky. Keeley put together a beautiful logo for us, which I think we all really fell in love with as soon as he put the sketch together. So
Cool.
yeah. And what was your other question?
So Boosted Reality, how did it come to be?
Yep.
And where did the name come from? Jeremy,
Oh, and the
anything to add
company
on
itself. I think when Jeremy and I started the company a number of years ago, and when we were starting to play with some of these ideas, but it wasn't until just a few years ago when Jeremy and I decided, to really take this forward. We really felt like we had an experience that people enjoyed at the conventions we were going to. And so we wanted to make it official, make a real company out of it, and to bring it to market.
It's been interesting because I can tell, I see your Facebook posts and stuff like that. So whenever you go to a convention, I see the post, and then I go on over to the Kickstarter and I see it go up. So you can definitely tell that people, when they sit down and play it, they're having fun with it, and they are sold on it. So that's awesome.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges, honestly, is there's a lot of games where you'll say, oh, what's this game? Oh, it's a deck builder game. Oh, okay, now I know what that is, and I like deck builder games, and I'll go. We're building a totally new experience. There's nothing really in the world today that's like the Rift Zone Contact and the experience that you have. And so I think a lot of people, they're not sure what to make of it until they play it, and then of course that is really rewarding. We've had people who say, I've never played war games, get really excited about it. We've had people who, fathers and sons come and play the game together and really loving it. it's been really, even people who are Warhammer fans have come and said that they really like it. It's not Warhammer, it's a different experience, but if you need to get a quick mini battle fix and you don't have a few hours, it's a great way to play. So I think that's one of the things that is both exciting and challenging. Is it's hard to say what is this experience like unless you get a chance to play it. But so far the play testing has been really satisfying because people get it almost immediately.
Awesome. Yeah, thinking about that, what you just said about not having several hours to play, you had told me at one point it takes about 45 minutes for a game.
You can scale it up and down quite a bit. So Jeremy and I,
we timed it.
We've done a 10-minute game, and we've done over an hour before when we had a really big throwdown battle. So awesome. The nice thing is that you could sort of pick and choose how what the game looks like and how you want to play. One of the interesting things about it is because of the fact that with our application we're keeping track of everything on the game board. If you were in the middle of a massive game and you said, I don't have time, you could put everything away and then you could bring it up again later and then lay everything out again and sort of pick up the game if you wanted to. Okay. So there's, and get that set up again really quickly, which is hard to do with some games. We have a joke because I love like Death May Die, which is a kind of a cooperative Cthulhu Lovecraft-based game. But I get a lot of anxiety taking it out and putting it away again. And it must take me, 45 minutes to get it set up and to get it tucked safely back in its box. So that was another thing that I do like is that our game is, it's fast to lay out and play, and then you can tuck it away quickly so you can get back to the rest of your day.
Cool. Okay, so Tyler did have a follow-up question about your logo. Why the rocket? Why did you choose a rocket?
That's a great question. Go ahead, Steve.
I think our vision really was that this was going to sort of carry people to new places. Really, I think we both love science fiction. We love the idea of sort of looking to the future of what gaming is. It's not that I don't love card games. I don't love traditional RPGs and board games. We still play those frequently. But we also want to sort of take people to a new place with what we're doing inside Boosted Reality. So our rocket is about transporting you to something that you wouldn't actually get to experience otherwise.
Awesome. And you'll see it. It's not going too nerdy into depth, but it's not just a typical straight siloed rocket. It is a curved, like 1950s style rocket, and we did that on purpose because if you go back to some of those super cheesy black and white sci-fi movies, there was just this joy in technology and space destruction rays and the rocket ships, and a lot of the way that we play and a lot of the way that we design the games is kind of embodying that joy of the new and the science. And it's not just augmented reality. We're not just adding on top of reality, we're boosting it, we're giving it a little shove and being supportive. So that's sort of one of the style guides that we went through when we were talking about what do we want people to be thinking about when they see the logo. And it's kind of that 1950s big balls of lightning coming out of a guy with a goatee and very basic superheroes. So cool. Fun.
Even the design of the Skryox as an alien race, we went more sort of classic sci-fi than we went sort of futuristic alien thematically. We wanted something that had some playfulness to it as well as looked like they were dangerous on the battlefield.
Awesome. Do you think with Boosted Reality, having Rift Zone Contact as its first game, are there more games coming down the pike, or is this your baby that you want to focus all your attention on?
We have so many ideas.
Yeah, Rem, I love all of my children equally. Rift Zone Contact is the first in the Rift Zone Odyssey series, and we're going to keep developing that.
Cool.
But one of the things that is super cool about the technology and the patents that we have on uniquely identifying pieces and the augmented reality and the way that we are able to digitally articulate the structure of the game means that we're going to be able to apply this same sort of technology to a whole set of different games, whether it's going to be tabletop battle games or whether it's going to be Steve's favorite worker placement resource management games. Any place where you see super complex things that you have to keep track of in your head, and it's kind of hard when the game stretches to 3 a.m, we'll be there.
Cool. Cool.
Absolutely. Well, and even just in sort of the small subgenre that is, kind of wargaming, the things that we've built would be really beautifully applied to starship battles with shield facings and to ships sailing on the ocean and, kind of galleons fighting off the pirates. And, there's all kinds of different things, even sort of a fantasy wargaming. So there's an endless number of ideas, but really right now we're committed to delivering an amazing experience on Rift Zone Contact and the Rift Zone Odyssey. So that stuff will wait for a bit.
Yeah, I love to point out that the fact that we are using the phone and augmented reality means that we're not limited to 2 dimensions.
That's cool.
We can see later flying, moving, multiple terrain, paying attention to the heights of different things. So that's one of the areas where we're really going to look forward to some of the magic we can bring.
That's awesome. Mech Hero asks, the game is mostly narrative based, right? Have you thought about doing a competitive format?
Actually, sorry, I got to get that word out of my vocabulary. It's both. So we support 2 modes of play. One is the narrative campaign mode where we're building up the story. The version of the game that Steve and I play most often we call skirmish, which is that combative. You essentially pick a point value for the size of armies that you want to allow. You build up your team of players, and then you draft units in order to try to accomplish the victory goal. And the one that Steve and I played most often is just a basic elimination, wipe your opponent off the face of the board. But we also support things like King of the Hill and Capture the Flag, and a mode that Steve likes to call Gauntlet, which is you try to take one of your units and protect it long enough to make it to a particular tile before the opponent can assassinate that one unit. So we definitely support that. And the skirmish mode is where we really drive towards another thing that is unique for us, is being able to support from 2 to 16 players. So, not that you're going to play a 16-player game in 45 minutes, just because we're always waiting on that one person who's taking forever to decide their move. But we can support a massive floor size battle of hundreds of units and 16 players all trying to accomplish a pretty big goal. It's chaos, but the app helps you manage it.
Okay,
I
cool.
guess one thing I'd add there, Jeremy, is one of the challenges we had. We were just together for a game night, and we had a game we wanted to play, and it supported up to 4 players. And so, of course, with 7 players, we were like, oh, well, do we have any games that are 7-player games? And there was one, but that was it. So out of the dozens of games that we had there, Rift Zone Contact solves that problem. If your 8th friend shows up, you can bring them into the game. So that's one of the things that was important to us, is that it's inclusive in every way that we can make it inclusive.
Cool. Okay. We have a couple more questions that have come in here.
Oh, good.
Awesome.
Tyler asks, what is your first non-mini household item you plan to chip and use in battle?
Ooh.
And what will it do?
Jeremy's already done this once. So, Jeremy, why don't you start?
Well, he said non-mini, though. Actually, give me 1 second. They always say never go off frame, but since I can.
Well, and now we can see the lovely artwork behind you, too. Oh, my gosh.
This is my first non-mini that I chipped and entered into a game. So Jedi Kermit managed to conquer the Mauler relatively quickly.
Love it.
Yeah. But what chance do you have against Kermit the Frog, though, really?
Right?
And wow, I have all these beautiful miniatures, but if I'm choosing something that's not specifically a miniature, I do have a really astounding, maybe alarming, according to my wife, collection of Godzilla figures. So bringing Godzilla onto the battlefield is definitely in the future, and Jeremy is working on a prototype of the application to let you create your own units in the battle. So
I love it.
We'll be playing that
That's
shortly.
awesome. Cool. Mech Hero says every move has consequences.
Absolutely. And sometimes not moving has consequences, as I've learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mech Hero also, to expand on the competitive format, also asks about the idea of exact tile terrain layouts and points caps and such. Any thoughts about that?
Yes. Yeah. So maybe just a brief overview of the way that you can set up a game. So you essentially, if you're doing a skirmish, the host will pick a points cap, and each unit has a different point value associated with it when you draft it into the army. So I've got a Space Ranger here. At level 0, the Space Ranger is 40 points. Now, since each unit can gain experience and gain weapons upgrades, I might choose to, if I've earned it, I might choose to bring in this Space Ranger at level 2, which is going to cost me 43 points instead of 40. But I can bring him in at level 0 at 40 points. And then the Excalibur here is 120 points. So based on the capabilities and the relative power, they're going to cost a little bit more or a little bit less. So that's where you set up the battle. And Steve and I have worked really hard to make sure that if you pick the default 500-point battle and both of you bring in 500 points plus or minus 15, that should be an even battle, assuming that you don't make any tactical errors like leaving your embedded sting embedded far too long and not getting up and moving. You should win. Or you should
Speaking from
come out to a
experience,
tie,
Jeremy?
I should say. Speaking from experience, the cost of not moving. Yeah. So that gets you the units cost, and that's how we've balanced the skirmish. And then the way that the tiles work, they don't need to be on the table contiguously. They don't need to be touching each other. You could throw down 1 to however many tiles on a table in any pattern that you want. And because we recognize it using the augmented reality, we just apply the terrain effects, and we apply the terrain effects equally to the units based on their different weapons and their different movement types. So the swarm here, which is a flying unit, is going to be able to make faster progress through the mountains than the let's say our Gungnir tank, which is a treaded vehicle, and this one's going to take a little bit longer to get through the mountains. So it balances out in the game in pretty much every configuration that you can come up with.
You keep pulling more and more minis than I'm expecting out from behind the screen. Can you just show us what you got? Like all the cool, like let's start with Scryox maybe, and
yeah. See, you're calling me out, Rem. I only grabbed a subset, and the reason I only grabbed the subset is because Steve and I had an awesome time going to a conference this past weekend and playtesting, and Steve still has most of my minis.
I do.
So I'll show you what I have.
Okay.
So we've seen the Mauler. That's our Scryox tank.
Can you move it a little closer to the camera, Jeremy?
See that detail.
Yeah.
Rawr.
She's
Can
beautiful.
you actually fit another mini into the Mauler's mouth?
Yes. Don't do it, Jeremy. Don't. Oh.
Not quite. Just bite his head off. That's fine.
Yeah. Although that's one of the things I really do love about playing the game and having the app is the graphics and the animations. So maybe a little bit of a spoiler, but because people have connected to the AMA, If you defeat your opponent as the Scryox, you get this really nice victory screen panning across, which is the Mauler with a Space Ranger being crushed in its jaws. So that's fun.
Gruesome.
So moving on from the Mauler, which is our massive tank, slow moving, heavily armored, we have the opposite, which is our swarm drones. It's a
That's
flying
cool.
unit. Relatively low on hit points, but super fast to move across the battlefield. And this one has a pretty devastating nanite fog attack, which
Ooh.
will partially blind the opponent. So it reduces the opponent's accuracy by 50% for 3 rounds.
Wow.
Which is another one of those areas where I kind of compare, as Steve does, to Gloomhaven. If you can remember all of those effect tokens that you've got in Gloomhaven that you're trying to like stack and keep track of on your card, the app handles all of that. So we can stack blindness and we can stack the corrosive infection from some of the units with nanites, and the app will just keep track of, oh, you're infected with nanites times 5. All right, that means that you're going to take this damage. So that's the swarm.
That's awesome. I like that one.
That's what I have for the Scryox today, and then we'll go from heaviest to lightest again. So I highlighted our Gungnir tank, quite literally a tank with decent movement. It moves faster than the Mauler does, and it really specializes in some of the longer range weapons. So he's got an optional missile, which costs a lot in the action point economy, but it has the advantage of being able to fire over buildings, which is pretty unique within the game. And also an autocannon, which at a distance is pretty accurate and does some devastating damage. And then it'll fall back to a Gatling gun, which hugely inaccurate at longer distances, but more accurate at closer up. So he's got kind of a balanced approach here.
Neat.
Yeah. And one of the things that Jeremy's calling out is the action point economy is really important in the game, and sort of choosing when you save action points, when you use them is a big part of the strategy, because you may have a unit hunker down until it's built up enough action points to make a sprint across the battlefield. You may decide to save some so you have some left for evasion or counterattacks, or you may decide to just go in an all-out blitz and hope that you can take down your opponent before they can respond. And so that's part of the fun of the game, is trying to figure out your strategy and making those tough tactical decisions.
Cool.
So this one would be our embedded Sting.
Ooh.
So it's a turret, essentially. Really slow to move, but it has a special combat ability that we call embed, which gives it some extra armor because it's kind of hunkered down on the battlefield, and improves the accuracy of the weapons because it's steadying itself with these chain binds that have been shot into the ground and are like holding it in place.
Ooh.
Also lovingly known as the tick.
Yes.
Neat.
One of the sound effects I'm going to sneak into the game is if you manage to embed the tick in something, it's just going to shout spoon.
Awesome.
I can't wait, Jeremy.
Little comic book humor for you.
Yeah.
Let's see. We showed the Excalibur. We mentioned his lightning sword and shield bash, as well as the Claymore Gatling gun.
Nice.
And then the final piece that I have on the table we showed earlier, but I'll move it much closer, is our Space Ranger.
Ooh.
That's our light infantry, can charge across the battlefield. He has a really long range hypervelocity rifle at level 0, which is highly accurate, but the damage drops off because of the air resistance, etc. But he's got a really nice flamethrower up close that can set the opponent on fire for 2 to 3 rounds.
Nice.
That's what I've got on the table. You can look at the Kickstarter page. Oh, look at that. If you look at the Kickstarter page, you can see an example of each of the different units on the different sides. Oh, wait, no, one more. This is our Scalpel,
Ooh.
which is the UEDF command unit. Both sides have a command unit. The Scalpel is for the UEDF, and on the Scryox side, we have the Nexus, both of which have the ability to heal or repair a unit, but they do it in different ways, kind of consistent with the way that the different races work. The Scalpel does kind of a bulk repair, as if you've got a mechanic that kind of climbed in there and ratcheted things back together and shouted about motivators and dilithium crystals. And then on the Scryox side, being a biomechanical set of experts, the Nexus unit has a healing nanite spray, which adds hit points and does repair over a longer period of time. So one of the tactics that Steve loves to do is to spray his mauler with a whole bunch of healing nanites proactively and then march it across the battlefield. So he's healing as he goes, which is really
I like
annoying.
that. That's clever. Neat.
Jeremy loves it too.
First thing I thought when you held up that last mini was from Portal. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah, it delivers cake on the battlefield.
Yes, that's right. That's the healing cake.
You also had one of the terrain tiles. Can you hold that up for a closer look too?
Yeah, I have all the terrain tiles. Those are easy. Steve left me with my terrain tiles.
So generous.
Yeah, so we did this, which is the forest on one side, the fungal forest. So the lore behind our Proxima Centauri b is that all life on the planet, as far as we can tell, is fungal. So we've got our fungal forest here, and then the flip side is the mycelium fields, kind of stretching across our flat terrain, the base terrain, if you want to call it that.
Cool.
And then move Kermit off of this one. On one side, we have our alien ruins.
Ooh.
Story-wise, nobody knows what they do yet, but they definitely look like there's some sort of technology there.
And they're really beautiful in the augmented reality. There's sort of these hovering polyhedrals.
Oh, neat.
It's very, very cool.
And then on the flip side is our basalt formations. So these strange rock formations that just seem to be jutting out of the ground. One of the few places where you don't really see any living material.
Okay.
Then, let's see, what do I have? Oh, move some more minis. We have our colony or base tiles, depending on what version of the game I'm working on currently. So this is the UEDF building. It's got a certain number of hit points, but otherwise it's blocking both direct attacks and movement.
Cool.
And then the flip side of the UEDF is the Scryox base.
Ooh.
So grown up using materials and biomechanically crafted by the Scryox. It's both a incubator and a protective shield for them.
Neat.
And what am I missing? I think I got them all.
I think that's all for the
first pack.
Yeah.
No,
and obviously
no spoilers.
Our intent is to introduce more terrains and more units as time goes on. So, lots of one of the things that's really important to us is the replayability and the fact that people can come back to the game and experience it a lot of different ways, so that it's never the same game twice. So that's the and you can accomplish that for a long, long time with what we're shipping in the first campaign pack. But there's ideas for all kinds of new terrains and new places for the battle to go to. So, like I said, we have no lack of ideas we're excited about, and so we're working on those a little bit in the background as we
awesome.
Get ready to close out the Kickstarter.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me today. It's already 3:00 Eastern time here.
Yeah, thank you.
So much fun.
Of course. So please, there's a lot of good stuff here. So if you're interested, check out. I just dropped the Kickstarter link back in chat, both on YouTube and on Twitch. Check it out. I'm pledged in at the captain tier so that I can skirmish and play. So So thank you guys so much for joining us and for explaining how all of this works and what's included. I have a better sense after seeing all this in action. So thank you guys. Anything else you want to say before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Steve and I both love. I mean, hopefully, you can tell we both love the game. We love the lore, and we love hearing from people. One of the best things about building this in the way that we built it is we can keep adding to the game, and we can keep enhancing the game and changing the way that things work. So, at the bottom of the Kickstarter page, there is a link to our link tree with all of our socials. Follow us on all the things, but I would say most importantly, if you love this stuff and you've got any questions whatsoever, join our Discord.
Cool.
We're pretty much there all the time. Hop in, ask your questions. We sometimes post little snippets or even surveys of what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So if you want to have an impact on how the game is built now, as well as how the game evolves over time, hop in and say hi.
Yeah, exactly. And if you have an idea, you think this game would be perfect if it had, whatever your idea is, then we want to hear about it because we have the ability to respond and to consider that as part of the game. And we definitely, I think some of the best ideas we have come from playtesting and from people who've gotten excited about it and contributed along the way.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Thank you guys for joining us. Check out the Kickstarter, give it a back. You can even follow the project for $5 just to throw your support if you can't do more. Share it on socials. Every little bit helps small creators and publishers become successful. So thank you all for your time, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you,
everybody.